Ethan's phone buzzed in the dead of night. A text from his brother Caleb slicing through the silence. "Mom knows. You need to talk to her." His heart raced, palms slick with sweat as he stared at the screen. For years, Ethan, 25, had buried his truth, dodging questions about girlfriends, pasting on smiles to keep his family's suspicions at bay. Last night, a stolen kiss with Marcus at a Seattle bar had felt like freedom, a reckless, fleeting moment that now threatened to unravel his carefully guarded life. It started after a grueling shift at the coffee shop, where Ethan worked as a barista. The day had been long, filled with impatient customers and the hum of espresso machines. He'd planned to head home, crash on the couch, and lose himself in a playlist. But something pulled him toward a bar a few blocks away, a place he'd passed countless times but never entered. He wasn't looking for anything or anyone, but the weight of routine pushed him through the door. Marcus was there, leaning against the counter, his presence steady and unassuming. At 30, he was a gym trainer with a quiet confidence that drew Ethan in without effort. They struck up a conversation, first about the music pulsing through the bar, then about dreams they'd tucked away. Marcus spoke of leaving competitive boxing for a life of mentoring others, his voice calm but alive with purpose. Ethan, usually guarded, found himself talking about his own restless search for something real, something that didn't feel like a lie. The hours slipped by, and the bar emptied out. Marcus leaned closer, his words soft but deliberate. "You ever feel like you're hiding from yourself?" The question hit Ethan like a punch, stirring something he'd long suppressed. He didn't answer, but his silence spoke volumes. When Marcus's hand brushed his, Ethan didn't pull away. Their lips met in a brief, electric kiss, a moment of truth Ethan hadn't dared imagine. For the first time, he felt alive, unburdened by the mask he'd worn for years. But the moment wasn't private. Josh, a co-worker from the coffee shop, had been at the bar, nursing a beer in the shadows. Ethan hadn't noticed him, but Josh noticed everything. By morning, the news had spread like wildfire. Josh, always eager for gossip, texted Caleb, Ethan's older brother, and the one person he'd trusted with half-truths about his life. Caleb, believing he was protecting Ethan, made a choice that would shatter him. He told their mother. The phone call came at dawn. Ethan's mother's voice was sharp, each word a blade. "Is it true? Are you one of them?" The disgust in her tone cut deeper than Ethan expected. He stammered, searching for words to explain, to deflect. But none came. "This isn't who we raised you to be," she said. "You need to fix this, Ethan, or you're no son of mine." The line went dead, leaving Ethan staring at his phone, his chest tight with panic. Caleb called next, his voice heavy with guilt, but laced with justification. "I had to tell her, Ethan. You can't keep living like this. It's for your own good." Ethan's anger flared, his voice shaking as he replied, "You had no right. You were supposed to be on my side." Caleb's silence on the other end only deepened the betrayal. The brother, who'd once been his anchor, had just cut him loose. By noon, the whispers had reached the coffee shop. Customers stared, their glances heavy with judgment. Josh smirked as he wiped down the counter, muttering something about keeping things professional. Ethan's boss called him into the back, his tone clipped. "We can't have this kind of drama affecting business," he said. "You're done here." Ethan stood frozen, the words sinking in. In less than a day, his world had collapsed. His family, his job, his carefully built facade, all gone. He walked the streets of Seattle, the city's gray drizzle mirroring his thoughts. Marcus texted, asking to meet, but Ethan ignored it. The kiss that had felt like freedom now felt like a mistake, a spark that had ignited chaos. He'd spent years hiding who he was, fearing this exact moment. Now exposed and alone, Ethan wondered if he could ever claw his way back, or if he even wanted to. The weight of rejection pressed down, and with every step, the tension grew, pulling him toward a breaking point. He wasn't sure he could survive. Ethan's phone hadn't stopped buzzing since dawn, but he ignored it, each vibration a reminder of the life he'd lost. The Seattle streets blurred past as he walked aimlessly, the sting of his mother's words, "You're no son of mine," looping in his mind. At 25, he'd built a fragile world of half-truths to keep his family close. Now, Caleb's betrayal had shattered it. His brother, the one person he'd trusted with pieces of his truth, had outed him, believing it was for his own good. Caleb's apartment was only a few blocks from the coffee shop where Ethan had been fired hours earlier. He hadn't planned to confront him, but his feet carried him there, driven by a mix of rage and desperation. He pounded on the door, his knuckles raw by the time Caleb opened it. "Why?" Ethan demanded, his voice trembling. Caleb stepped aside, gesturing him in, but Ethan stayed rooted in the doorway, fists clenched. "I thought it would help," Caleb said, his tone defensive. At 28, he'd always been the protector, the one who fixed things. "You can't keep hiding, Ethan. Mom needed to know." Ethan's laugh was bitter, sharp. "Help? You told her I'm something she hates? You knew what she'd do." Caleb's jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. "She'll come around," he said. "She just needs time." Ethan shook his head, the ache in his chest growing. "You don't get it. You broke us." The argument escalated, words flying like shards of glass. Caleb insisted he'd acted out of love, but Ethan saw only betrayal. "You were my safe place," he said, voice cracking. "Now I've got nothing." Caleb reached for him, but Ethan stepped back, the distance between them a chasm. He left, the door slamming shut behind him, echoing the finality of their rift. Back on the streets, Ethan's phone lit up with a voicemail from his mother. Her voice was colder now, each word deliberate. "You need to choose, Ethan. Get help, or don't come back." The ultimatum landed like a blow, stealing his breath. He'd known her conservative streak ran deep, but he'd hoped, foolishly, that love might outweigh her judgment. Now that hope was gone. Marcus texted again, his message simple. "I'm here if you need me." Ethan stared at it, his thumb hovering over the reply button. The memory of their kiss, fleeting and electric, felt like a lifeline, but fear pulled him back. What if Marcus was just another risk, another way to lose everything? He pocketed the phone, unable to respond. By evening, Ethan sat on a park bench, the city's hum distant. Losing his job had been bad enough, but Caleb's betrayal and his mother's rejection cut deeper. He'd spent years dodging who he was, fearing this exact fallout. Now it was here, and he was alone. The tension coiled tighter, each thought a question. Could he face this? Could he be himself when the cost was so high? The night stretched on, and Ethan felt the weight of a choice he wasn't ready to make. Ethan's world had shrunk to the size of his apartment, the walls closing in as days bled into nights. At 25, he'd lost his job, his family, and the fragile mask he'd worn to keep them close. His mother's ultimatum? "Get help," or "Don't come back," echoed in his mind, each word a reminder of her rejection. Caleb's betrayal stung even worse. His brother's choice to out him, leaving a wound that refused to heal. Seattle's gray drizzle matched Ethan's mood. The city's pulse a distant hum he couldn't connect to. He hadn't answered Marcus's texts. The memory of their kiss, once a spark of freedom, now felt like a mistake that had cost him everything. Marcus had offered a place to stay, a shoulder to lean on, but Ethan couldn't face him. What if letting someone in just led to more pain? He deleted Marcus's latest message, "You don't have to go through this alone," and turned off his phone, the silence both a relief and a weight. The days dragged on. Ethan scoured job listings, but his heart wasn't in it. The coffee shop firing still burned. His boss's excuse about drama a thin veil for prejudice. He avoided the usual spots, afraid of running into Josh, whose gossip had started this mess. Every glance from a stranger felt like judgment, as if the city itself knew his secret and disapproved. Ethan's thoughts spiraled. Was he wrong to be himself? Was he unlovable, just as his mother seemed to think? One evening, unable to sit still, Ethan wandered to a pier overlooking Puget Sound. The water churned below, mirroring the chaos in his chest. He'd spent years hiding his identity, dodging questions, crafting lies to fit in. Now exposed, he felt raw, like a nerve laid bare. The urge to call Caleb tugged at him, but the memory of their fight, "You broke us," stopped him cold. His brother's apology, if it ever came, wouldn't undo the damage. Marcus tried again, leaving a voicemail this time. "Ethan, I get it. You're scared. But shutting me out won't fix this." His voice was steady, warm, but Ethan couldn't bring himself to respond. The risk of trusting again felt too great. What if Marcus saw the mess he was and walked away? Ethan deleted the voicemail, his hands shaking. He wanted to believe in the connection they'd shared, but fear was louder, whispering that love was just another thing he'd lose. By the end of the week, Ethan barely recognized himself. He hadn't slept, hadn't eaten much. The mirror showed a stranger, hollow, defeated. He wondered if his mother was right, if he could fix himself and claw back the life he'd had. But the thought made his stomach twist. That life had been a lie, a cage he'd built to survive. Now, alone and unmoored, Ethan faced a truth he couldn't escape. He didn't know how to be himself, but he couldn't go back to pretending. The tension coiled tighter, pushing him toward a breaking point he wasn't sure he could endure. Ethan's footsteps echoed on the Seattle pavement, the city's gray drizzle a faint mist against his skin. At 25, he'd been running on empty, his life unraveling since Caleb's betrayal and his mother's rejection. The loss of his job and the silence from Marcus had left him adrift, questioning if he could ever be himself without losing everything. But a chance encounter was about to shift the ground beneath him, forcing him to face the fear he'd let define him. He'd gone to a corner store for coffee, desperate for something to cut through the fog of sleepless nights. There, at the counter, was Jamie, 28, a stranger with a sharp gaze and a pride pin on his bag. Ethan noticed it, his heart skipping, half recognition, half fear. Jamie caught him staring and grinned. "First time seeing one of these in the wild?" he asked, tapping the pin. Ethan froze, then nodded, unsure why he didn't look away. They got to talking. Jamie, a local activist, spoke with a fire that felt contagious. He'd been disowned by his family years ago for being gay, yet he stood tall, unapologetic. "It hurts," Jamie said, "but you find people who see you for you. That's what keeps you going." His words hit Ethan hard, stirring a spark he thought he'd lost. Jamie mentioned a support group nearby, scribbling the address on a napkin. "Come if you're ready. No pressure." Ethan went, though every step felt like a gamble. The group met in a community center, a small circle of strangers who shared stories of rejection, resilience, and hope. A man spoke of losing his partner to family pressure. A woman recounted finding acceptance after years of hiding. Ethan listened, his chest tight with recognition. For the first time, he wasn't alone in his struggle. When it was his turn, he hesitated, then spoke. "My family turned their backs. I lost my job. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this." The room was quiet, but their nods, their presence, felt like a lifeline. The group's warmth cracked something open in Ethan. He'd spent years dodging his truth, fearing the cost of being seen. But here, among people who'd faced the same pain, he felt a flicker of courage. Jamie lingered after, offering a number. "You're not alone, Ethan. Call me if you need to talk." Ethan clutched the napkin, a small anchor against the storm inside him. That night, he texted Marcus. "Can we meet?" The reply was instant. "Name the place." They met at a park, the air crisp with autumn. Ethan's voice shook as he spoke. "I pushed you away because I was scared. I didn't think I deserved this. Us." Marcus listened, his presence steady. "You don't have to have it all figured out," he said. "Just don't shut me out." Ethan nodded, a weight lifting as he took Marcus's hand, their fingers interlocking in quiet defiance. The next day, Ethan returned to the support group, his resolve growing. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was choosing to fight. The fear of rejection still lingered, but Jamie's words echoed. "You find people who see you." Ethan was done hiding. He'd face whatever came next, not alone, but with a strength he was only beginning to understand. Ethan stood at the edge of Seattle's Pride event, the crowd a vibrant pulse of laughter and music. At 25, he'd spent weeks wrestling with the wreckage of his old life, his mother's rejection, Caleb's betrayal, the job he'd lost to prejudice. But the support group and Marcus's steady presence had kindled a fire in him, a resolve to live openly. Now, as flags waved and voices rose, Ethan felt the weight of his fear begin to lift, replaced by a fragile but growing sense of belonging. He'd agreed to meet Marcus here, their first public outing since reconnecting. Ethan's stomach churned as he scanned the crowd, half expecting judgment in every glance. But Marcus appeared, his hand finding Ethan's with a quiet confidence. "You ready for this?" he asked, his voice warm. Ethan nodded, gripping Marcus's hand tighter, a small act of defiance against the doubts still whispering in his mind. The event was alive with energy, people dancing, sharing stories, celebrating unapologetically. Ethan spotted Jamie, the activist who'd pulled him out of his spiral, leading a group chant nearby. Jamie waved him over, introducing him to others from the support group. Their smiles, their ease, made Ethan feel seen in a way he hadn't thought possible. For the first time, he wasn't hiding, and the realization hit him like a rush of air after holding his breath too long. But the past wasn't done with him. Ethan had one more hurdle to face: his family. He'd texted Caleb asking to meet, driven by a need to close that chapter. They met at a quiet cafe the next day, the air thick with tension. Caleb's eyes were heavy with regret. "I messed up, Ethan," he said, voice low. I thought I was helping, but I hurt you. I'm sorry. Ethan studied him, the ache of betrayal still sharp, but softened by time. I needed you to trust me, Ethan said, not decide for me. Caleb nodded, tears brimming. I want to make this right. Ethan exhaled, offering a small nod. It wasn't full forgiveness, but it was a start. Their mother was next. Ethan drove to her house, Marcus waiting in the car for support. She stood in the doorway, her posture rigid. I can't accept this, she said, her voice cold but wavering. It's not what I believe. Ethan's chest tightened, but he stood tall. I'm your son, not your project. I'm done pretending. She didn't respond, her silence louder than words. Ethan turned away, the rejection stinging but no longer breaking him. He had a life to build, and it didn't depend on her approval. Back at the Pride event, Ethan rejoined Marcus and the others. The music swelled, and he let himself laugh, dance, exist, without apology. Jamie pulled him into a group photo, the crowd cheering as they raised their flags. Ethan's heart swelled, not with the absence of pain, but with the strength to carry it. He'd lost his family's acceptance, but he'd gained something greater. A community that saw him, a love that held him, and a truth he'd never hide again. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell. More stories are coming that will move you, inspire you, and challenge the way you see your own journey. Every story matters, and each one brings us closer to who we are meant to become.